This is Brianne from mynameisbrianne.com. Tell me if this situation sounds at all familiar. You're decided you're going to create a course. Maybe it's going to be a workshop or a webinar, or you're going to, create this online video training course or an email series, whatever. You're going to teach something to someone. And you sit down to work on your content and you realize, man, if I try and teach everything, that's like way too much information. But what do I leave out? I mean, I have to teach this because it's important, and this information, well, you need that in order to, figure out this other thing, and it's all kind of all connected, and it's tough, right? I mean, you got to figure out what to put in and what to leave out, and it's one of the most critical pieces to developing a course. You got to get it right, or people are going to hate it. Well, the good news is that there's actually tools and techniques you can use to help you get your course set up with the right information. And the tool I'm going to present to you today is what I call a step-by-step approach to mastery. So, let's get started. What is mastery anyway? The easiest way to explain it is by giving an example. So, I'm going to just say E equals mc squared. Obviously, at some point, I learned that. I have that level of mastery of the concept of E equals mc squared. Enough that I can recite it, that I can just say it back to you. I may have absolutely no idea what it means, but I've learned it enough to be able to say it back to you, to recite what I've heard. On the flip side, I could be this, brilliant physicist who is creating new theories about how the universe functions. And I could be at such a high level of mastery, I could have learned so much that, I'm taking ideas that are, all spread out and they're all different, and I'm putting them together in ways that have never been done before. And I think you would agree that there's learning that happens there, but it's a lot higher level of learning that gets you to that place than the place of just being able to recite E equals mc squared. That's the difference we're talking about when we're talking about mastery. There's a difference between just being able to recite something and being able to create something brand new. And in fact, those aren't the only two levels of masteries. In fact, those are only the most extreme levels. When we talk about information and stuff that happens in the brain, the cognitive learning that happens up here, what we find is that there's actually 6 levels of mastery. The lowest level is just knowing something, being able to define it, being able to recite it back. You've been given information and you can, regurgitate it back out just the way it was given to you. A little bit higher than that is when you actually understand it, when you can give examples or explain something in your own words. That's a higher level of mastery. You've learned it more deeply. Higher than that is when you can apply it, when you can, given a formula, you can do, you can imitate something, you can check off boxes, you can follow step-by-step instructions. You not only know it and understand it, but you can actually do something with this information. Maybe you can even go higher than that. And the next level of mastery, which is you can analyze it. You can take this and break it down into all its pieces, and you can figure out how the pieces fit together and how they relate to each other and which ones go together and which ones don't. You can make determinations about things, and you can compare and contrast them. That's a higher level yet again. Higher even than that is once you've broken apart, maybe you can diagnose something. Maybe you can say, this is working and this isn't. You can evaluate it. You can say, here's a criteria and a standard. This either meets it or it doesn't meet it. That's, again, a higher level of mastery. And the highest level is the version that we talked about before, where you're a physicist creating brand new theories about the universe. You're creating something new. So what that basically means is that when you teach something, you're going to be targeting a particular level of mastery. Maybe you want someone just to be able to regurgitate a fact. Maybe you want them to actually understand it and be able to explain it in their own words. Maybe applying it, so following instructions, doing something step by step. Maybe that's where you want them to be. Maybe you want them to analyze. So not just follow something step by step, but break down those parts and understand each part. Evaluate it, figure out what works and what doesn't, and look for opportunities to make improvement, to diagnose, to measure success and failure. Maybe you want to teach to the highest level of mastery. You want people to be able to create something brand new that's never existed before. The first thing to do is figure out what level of mastery are you teaching to. Then you figure out how do people get to that level. And here is where it becomes really, really cool. When you've figured out what level of mastery you want to get someone to. The content that you put in your course is the content that moves them through each of the lower levels of mastery. So let's say that in your course, you're going to give people a formula, a checklist. If you follow these steps, you will be able to, maybe it's create a sales page, maybe it's, write a book, whatever that is. But you're going to give them a step-by-step formula that if you fill in these boxes, if you check these things off, if you imitate this structure that I have given you, you will have completed the course. You'll have done what you set out to do. That's the applied level of mastery. You're giving them a sales page and you're going to teach them how to imitate that. In order to teach someone to do something at an applied level, you only need to teach them the know level, the understand level, and then the apply level. So for a sales page, you would need them to know certain words. You probably would need them to know what a headline is, and you would need them to know what a value proposition is, and you would need them to know these various things, just enough to be able to, give a definition so that they actually, can recite back what they learned. You need to have a common vocabulary to talk about these things. The next thing that you need to be able to do, okay, they know this, they need to understand it. They need to understand what the role of a headline is. They need to be able to cite examples of a sales pitch. They need to be able to explain the value of using you language in copy instead of I language. These are understanding things. They need to be able basically to take just what they know as definitions and express it in a different way, to really understand what's going on. And then, if you're going for the apply level, then you would give them a formula and say, okay, do these particular things. If you've picked up my landing page guide, the self-assessment guide to landing and sales pages, this is basically what this is. I start by giving you terms and definitions for what the different parts of a sales page are. Then I help you to understand them. I give you some context and information about what those things are. And finally, I give you some checklists to use. And you say, yes, I've done this, yes, I've done this, yes, I've done this, yes, I've done this. I give you a formula to implement, something to imitate, something just to copy, alter, to adjust a little bit. You're not creating something new, but you're applying what you've learned to your own situation. That is what you would do if you were shooting for an apply level of mastery. Now, if you were choosing an evaluate level of mastery, then you would say, what do people need to know? What do people need to understand? What do they need to apply? What do they need to analyze? And finally, what do they need to evaluate? What you do is you figure out what your target level of mastery is, and then you figure out what are the lower level of masteries that lead to that target level. Anything that fits within those lower levels is content that you include, and anything that doesn't directly fit into one of those levels of mastery, you leave out, because it's not actually going to help people get to the goal you want them to achieve. So let's just give one more example, and I'm going to give the example that takes you all the way through to the highest level of mastery. Let's say that I want someone to be able to create or compose a paragraph in a foreign language. Now, that's a pretty high level that I'm asking someone to do. I'm asking them to take all this different stuff that they know and combine it into something new. High level of mastery. To start off then, I need to move them through the lower 5 levels. Know, understand, apply, analyze, and evaluate before they can get to creation. What does that look like? For know, they're going to have to know some basic vocabulary. They're going to have to know the definition of a word. Now, they're just going to have to recite it back. They're going to have to know basic sentence structure. They're going to have to know what a verb is. They're going to have to memorize different verb endings or noun endings or whatever's important in that foreign language. It's just base level knowledge. They're going to have to recite that stuff and just know it. They might not understand what it means, but they have to know it. That's the first thing I need to present. Before I can tell people you need to conjugate your verbs, I need them to know what a verb is. The next level is that they need to understand. So they need to be able to give an example or explain something in their own words. They need to be able to restate it in different words. Basically, they need to have a little bit of a deeper understanding. In the case of a foreign language, one really great example is, it's one thing to be able to say, this word translates to this. But if you've ever learned a language before, you know that it's not usually one-to-one. A great example that I love is in Latin, the word for war is basically the same word as a beautiful thing. Now, tell me if that doesn't completely change your understanding of what that word means. Not only are you talking about war, you're talking about a beautiful thing. And there's some connotations there that are super, super interesting. That's the level of understanding, is where you start to be able to explain in your own words and not just recite something back. When you get to the apply level, in this case, I'm going to give you some simple sentence structures. So because we're talking about Latin, I'm going to say Roma in Italia est. Now that means Rome is in Italy. And I'm then going to give you that sentence, and I'm going to change out the word Rome, and I'm going to change out the words Italy. And instead of saying Roma in Italia est, Rome is in Italy, I'm going to give you the formula, and I'm going to say Italia in Europa est. Italy is in Europe. It's imitation, right? It's just swapping words in and out. And I'm going to ask you, okay, if you swap this word in, swap this word out, you're going to apply what you've learned, apply your vocabulary, and you're going to not create something new. You're just going to demonstrate how this all fits together. You're going to illustrate an example, or you're going to basically apply, right? You're going to apply something to a pattern that I've given you. The next step would be, okay, you can create some basic sentences. You can, move some words around and you can kind of figure them out. But can you analyze it? Can you break it down? When you look at this sentence, can you actually break down and say, oh, hey, this is what's going on here. This is the verb, the action that's going on, and this is the person doing that action. And I actually understand how those things go together. This person's doing the action, and this person's receiving the action, and you start to get into like verb conjugations and nouns and declensions and all that crazy stuff. Don't worry, if you haven't learned a language, that part's not important. I mean, it is important if you're learning a language. It's not important to the example. Basically, what I'm saying is, you figured out how to imitate. Now you're going to analyze. You're going to look at someone else's writing. You're going to break it down. You're going to see what they're doing. You're going to see how the pieces fit together. How do the sentences fit together? What goes in a paragraph? How do the words fit together? What comes first? What comes last? How do they play together? That's an analyze level. Once I've taught you how to analyze, then I'm going to ask you to evaluate it. I'm going to ask you to say, okay, so you've now broken this down, you figured out what this is, and you figured out, what this is. Now I want you to critique it, or I want you to, evaluate it. I want you to be able to give me a little more, information. Not just that this is a verb and this is a noun, but, these actually go together because this is the right ending for this noun. It goes with this verb. I've got a criteria, and I can evaluate whether or not that goes together. I can evaluate whether this is a good sentence or a bad sentence. I can evaluate whether this makes sense or this doesn't make sense. I've got some criteria, and I can take everything I've learned and I can make some decisions, some judgments based on that. And once you've taught me to do all of those things, then I can create something new. I can create a beautiful passage in Latin or German or Spanish or whatever language it happens to be, because I know what the words mean. But more than that, I understand them. I can create sentences based on not only imitation, but I can analyze sentences to understand how they work, and I can evaluate what's actually going on here, and then I can create something new. And that, in a nutshell, is the mastery process. So when you're creating a course, what you need to do is figure out, obviously, what am I going to teach? That's the number one step for everything. And for every topic that you're going to teach, ask yourself, what level of mastery do I want someone to be able to achieve? Do I want them to be able to imitate what I'm doing? Do I want them to be able to analyze their own results? Do I want them to be able to evaluate the quality of something? Maybe I want them to create something brand new that's never been done before. Once you've determined that, then go back and look step by step for each of the lower levels of mastery. What fits in? What do you have to know in order to be able to create this thing? What do you have to understand? What do you have to apply? And so on and so forth. By doing that, you'll figure out the exact information that is critical so that your learners can go from not knowing anything all the way up to the level of mastery that you want them to achieve. That's what I have for you today. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you have any comments, please drop them below. I'd love to hear from you.